Schools can be pretty scary in many ways. Math tests, bad teachers that make you wonder why they ever became teachers when they hate kids so much, and some other things that are more sad than scary. At least most schools are not built on top of an ancient shrine that can summon an elder god, right? Because that would truly be scary, but also pretty cool. That's what Iru, a Japanese exclusive game for the PlayStation 1, is basically about. Thanks to Snowy Area and the team, and shout out to anyone translating video games in general, you're pretty cool, there's an English translation for the game, so even people who do not understand Japanese can play it, if you desire to do so. There will be spoilers throughout the whole video, so I would advise you to close the video if you still want to play it yourself. Tomorrow is the big school festival and your group is not finished yet, so you gotta stay after school to finish up, which makes you wonder what the hell everyone was doing because every other class actually finished theirs. I can't be the only one who was always a bit jealous of these festivals in anime, right? Call me a weeb, but it could have been cool to have something like a haunted house at your own school or a maid cafe, even though I would probably have hated it since it would mean more work to do and you would have to stay after school. Better than normal class though, most likely. Since Iru is a horror game, you just know that something will totally go wrong because it's never a good idea to let teenagers stay alone in a horror setting, even if there's may some adults around. The adults will be useless and the teenies even more so, which is also the case here. Before you get scolded for sleeping and not walking, you actually see a vision, a premonition. The inside of a little church with a girl getting brutally killed and telling you that you are the one who has to stop it before it's too late because an ancient evil awakened. Whenever you see or hear the words an ancient evil, you just know that you're in for a fairly cliche kind of story. But is that also true for this game? I totally went blind into the game and it helped me to be surprised a tiny bit at where the story goes. You might expect another student to be the killer, and to a degree that's right since one of them is responsible for monsters showing up. Not just any monsters though, but monsters from the Cthulhu mythos, which I just did not really expect. You would think maybe there's some yokai running around trying to murder everyone, but nope, it's actually monsters created by a Western author. Fear not though, you don't need to have read any Lovecraft book to get any of it. In a way that's what makes it so good. To people who do not know where they're from, they might just look like a blobby blob or a fish-like lizard kind of thing. But if you're a fan of Lovecraft, you can point at the screen and say, wow, is it a Shoggoth or a deep one? I'm not afraid to admit that one of the first Lovecraft related things I have watched in my life was Hayure Nyaruko-san. People who haven't watched it can't call themselves a true fan of Lovecraft's works. Imagine you wanna get into Cthulhu stuff and you visit the wiki and press the random article button and land exactly here and see this. You would fall in love immediately, right? It's great how anime can bring us all together. Lovecraft himself would have loved anime, I'm sure of it. Iru is the antithesis of games such as Outlast, games that throw you right into the game in the first 5 to 10 minutes with its scares and chasing sequences. Iru knows it's a horror game, you know it's a horror game, but do you know when it starts being one for real? You don't. For the first 45 minutes I basically just went around going from room to meet the characters, see a bunch of little cutscenes, get told to find this guy or that girl, etc. And none of that was truly scary, but it set the tone of the game already pretty well. Some of the characters are saying mysterious things. You know something is happening in the background, but nothing concrete yet. The weak draw distance so you can't see too far down the hallways also helps with that. And especially the creepy but not overly creepy track that plays the whole time. All of it just makes you wait and wait and wait till something actually happens. It builds up the whole suspense to see what will happen, who will be the first person to die, and how will it happen. Horror can be anything. There is no true or one kind of horror really. It can have a slow pacing, but it can also have a fast pacing. Both can work. I personally prefer if it's slowly creepingly crawling towards you. You know something is wrong. You know eventually you will have to run or fight. But if it happens too early already, it takes away too much of its surprise factor, especially when it gets used way too often quickly. Sequences such as running away are so sparingly used in Iru that they might as well not even exist, a whooping 3 times, and none of them are really hard to dodge. You get forced into a little scripted cutscene that makes your character run into a room and now you have to find a place to hide. Fast. The game is even graceful enough to show you how much time you have left. In a way, it can make it more suspenseful, but also kinda take away the suspense. There's two types of people in a situation like this. Oh hell no, the clock is ticking down, mamma mia, what do I do? Where do I go? And then they scramble towards the place to hide. Others will just go, oh look, I can see how much time I still have left, easy peasy lemon squeezy, no problemo. I'm a person that crumbles easily under pressure, so I'm more of the first type, but in Iro, you basically can't fail these encounters either way, even if you're sweating bullets, which you probably won't, but sweating is good for your skin, and it can even smell nice. I smell like coffee when I'm sweaty. It adds to the game's atmosphere though. You never know when one of these moments will happen. In other games you pick up an important item, boom, enemy encounter. You talk to an NPC you needed to talk to, boom, here's your encounter right after, boom boom boom. They keep throwing such things at you, while here that doesn't really happen. It even makes you crave it. You're looking for that thrill. You want to be put under pressure. Too bad the game really just loves to edge you. You want it, but will the game give it to you? Another thing that makes the first encounter special is that after you escape and go back to the scene where you encountered the girl beating a friend to a pulp, that everything went back to normal, as if nothing happened here. What if this was all just in your head? What is real and what isn't? Can I trust the game to tell the truth, or is it gonna try to lie to me? Nowadays, we are just so used to these kind of horror games where you just run and hide. But this came out in the first half of 1998. One of the only other games you can really compare it to during that time is Clock Tower, where you have no real way to defend yourself and you have to hide and run. Those are more like point and click horror adventures though, since you control the characters by clicking onto things instead of controlling them yourself. I checked the 90s horror game section on Wikipedia, which made me scratch my head a bit because is Castlevania really horror? Also, it brought back childhood memories of watching my dad play 3D Ultra Pinball Creep Night. I wouldn't call that a horror game either, a fun game though. So I looked through a bunch of those games and most of them had something in common: combat. Instead of just running and hiding, most games always gave you the option to shoot the enemy and buy some time or just straight up killing them. With a few exceptions like Echo Knight, which is actually made by From Software, and I absolutely loved the first one, because that's the only one I played. Still gotta play the others. Would recommend it if you're looking for a nice puzzle horror adventure game. So then Iro comes around the corner and says, hey, who needs Clock Tower when I am on the block? You can hide in full 3D. It's probably one of the earliest games that lets you hide that way. I looked around and I really couldn't find any other game that did it earlier. Maybe I missed something, so I can't say for sure if it was the very first game that did it in 3D in horror games. Also, I know you should probably never ever take Quora as a source, but when Google recommended me a thread on it that was basically what was the first game ever where you have to run and hide from enemies instead of finding them, I was curious to check it out. So I did, and one of the answers was Outlast Whistleblower. How? Wouldn't it have at least been the very first Outlast, not the DLC for it? Because for DLC to exist, you have to have an actual game first. Was this written by some kind of bot? I mean, they do also recommend Siren, which is a great game, but also totally wrong for that question. Just another example that you should never believe this site, since anyone can just write anything. Never believe anyone on the internet. What if this game actually released in the Western world? Would it have been received well? Hard to say, but I got the feeling probably not, because of its slow pacing and focus on having no combat. Maybe this is a stretch, but a bit later you could see something like that happen in the Japanese horror movie world. Movies such as the original Ring or Ju-On, which is The Grudge, were big successes, but the higher ups in Hollywood thought, hey, let's take those movies and make them more American, so they also become super big here in the Western world. Iro is not American at all, or what the American market would have maybe wanted. No combat, the characters are not totally stupid, no sexy scenes, except that Mrs. Hojo is kinda looking damn good, and how many people would be able to relate to a Japanese school instead of an American high school? It's fun to fantasize about things that could have been. Maybe it would have actually made a big impact here and we would have seen more games like this, where you have to hide instead of just fighting. If you look at the game with that kind of lens, it becomes something more special. Nowadays it might be totally normal to hide in a locker in a horror game, but back then that must have been something truly special. Seeing the principal look right at you through it. Even if it may feel stupid, like if I can see him so clearly, then why can't he see me clearly? I mean, he's an old man, and he's not even truly a man, but a clay doll that was created by the evil mastermind, but still, he should have caught me here. Also, this will most likely sound like I am trolling, but I mean this 100%. I was really impressed with the way the characters looked because they emote really well. They blink and move their mouths when talking, and you can really feel the emotion that they're going through at the moment. Misa is the kind of girl that's always a bit mean and pissed off, and just looking at her makes you feel that she's that way. Kyoko really does move the way a girl would when she's annoyed by her friend being too much of a chicken to ask you out on a date. Despite the characters looking like this, I think most people nowadays would look just at the characters and already think, yep, there's no way this can scare me, and as a huge scaredy cat myself, I can say I wasn't really truly scared either at any point, but the atmosphere of the game is really nice. People growing up nowadays probably look at the very first zombie you encountered in Resident Evil 1 and pee their pants because they're laughing too much at boomers who actually pissed their pants at seeing the zombie back in the day, because now it just looks so goofy and silly. But back then it was the way games looked. Many games, especially ones that play in a smaller area, can still feel really big depending on how they use their space. In Iro you have 3 floors, and each floor basically has a front and back side, which means around 6 hallways you can actually go through, many of those having rooms everywhere, but not every room is unlocked. There's more locked rooms than unlocked rooms. I actually didn't count because I do not like math, but it feels like it, and that's the important part. In your mind it makes you think, okay, I'm gonna have to find lots of keys and use them to unlock the broadcasting room eventually. You wanna know what? You don't get to unlock the broadcasting room at all. Same with many other rooms. At the end of the game I had a total of 2 keys, one for a singular classroom and another one for a bunch of shelves with books in them that I needed. So what happens to the rest of the classrooms or other rooms? They stay closed except for a few more opening up throughout the game when some NPCs do something in them, which also doesn't happen too often. Added to that, you also get rooms that are basically never important, so they might as well should have also been locked. Also, how did the teachers allow the students to build a whole casino in one of the classrooms? I feel like that should be illegal, but it gives the game a bigger feel, a bigger world, even if it might seem unneeded since there's nothing to do in them. But it gives you the illusion of thinking these rooms may become important eventually, even if they never do. It's a fairly short game because I was able to beat it in only 3 hours, and most of the time I just aimlessly wandered around not knowing where I have to go. Which is the biggest problem the game has. You have to go around and sometimes just hope you pick the right room to look in. You have unlimited stamina though, so you can endlessly run, but one of the other bigger problems is the controls. Turning around is a bit of a pain, so when you enter a room and see nobody in it, you can only just start turning around and leaving again. Having a quick 180 turn button does not exist, which would have fixed this problem easily. Nowadays it's something all of these games have, but back then not so much. So you go from room to room just hoping you pick the right one. If you did pick the right one, then it's time to pick the next right one, and the one after. Sometimes you do get directions or a little hint of where to go, but mostly you don't. Like when your friend hurts herself and she needs some medicine. Where could that be? Oh yes, the nurse's room. So you go there and yep, something happens in there. Yay. Not very yay that the principal's clay doll killed the nurse, because I was rooting for her to survive. She was just covering in the room the whole game, so I thought, hey, she deserves to survive. What kind of person would kill a nurse, right? Nurses are there to save, don't kill the good people that save others. Obviously monsters don't care. Her death is kinda also the most brutal one. Sure, some got sucked into a big blob. Others got sucked dry by a lizard, but she got stabbed so hard that her ribs are showing. She's also missing her stockings and shoes she wore before. I did not notice this because I'm into shoes or feet or anything like that, but because I thought it's weird how her feet look like she's wearing heels when there's no more heels. And other times the game tells you nothing about where the next sequence will most likely be, so you gotta go through every room to find a specific NPC. That's just kinda what you do the whole game. The game also has puzzles, but calling them puzzles is like an insult to actual puzzles, because none of them will ever make you scratch your head. I will tell you about my favorite puzzle though. There's a Shoggoth and he is in the way, and you get told to feed him because then for some reason he disappears, which makes him very much a cutie. I get to feed my very own little cosmic alien. You feed him by obtaining the jaw of meat, which just looks delicious. All you have to do for that is opening a crate with a crowbar. Even though there is a corpse really close to the Shoggoth, so I was thinking, why not just feed the corpse to him? Save the money for a real funeral. But also, in my opinion, every horror game should be allowed to have one or two puzzles that make you hate the game for how dumb or convoluted the puzzle was. A puzzle that makes you go, oh, that's how you solve it, that's really, really stupid. Which is actually a good thing that the game does not have any of those because many people hate them. Even though in a story way it's not good to not have them. You would think removing the sign to summon Cthulhu would be something nobody could solve since it would end the world. But here all you do is insert a red gem into a wall that shoots a laser so that you can now open the thing that Cthulhu was kinda sealed in. This red gem was also already used in another puzzle, and you didn't even need to do anything special to find it. You go into some weird maze that some students have made and take the gem from a dead guy. Soon they have had better security, maybe requiring like 20 gems. We're talking about something that could end the world, you know? You gotta come up with a bigger puzzle for that. Is Cthulhu even that powerful? He kinda is, but in one of the stories he literally gets hit by a boat and just pieces out and thinks, yeah, I'm going back to sleep. So maybe summoning him isn't even all that bad, because with modern technology we could even crash a plane into him. One with like tons of explosives so it goes kaboom. Why am I picking Cthulhu to summon? Because that's what happens in one of the bad endings in the game. He literally gets summoned in it. He could have tried summoning one of the even greater beings though, because in the end Cthulhu is just a bit of a skipping stone in comparison to the actual horrors that linger around. That's the goal of the two masterminds of the game, one of them being Hikawa, or also depending on the actions you have taken in the game, it could be your hot teacher, Mrs. Hojo, which kinda makes more sense to me that she was hiding something way bigger. I wish she would have been my villain because she is a baddie. Sorry. In my playthrough of the game, there was also that one constant feeling of her planning something big. She gave you the impression of knowing what's going on and pretending that she doesn't know. She also has some weird pictures in her office. Maybe she's just a bit freaky though. Sometimes she would say that she's protecting a student, and then the next time you enter the room, you would see her being alive with the student being dead. Why would the monster ignore her? Why wouldn't it kill both? What if she's the culprit? That's what the game wants you to think, but if you take the path I took through the game, apparently she's not evil, or maybe plan to do something evil first, but then she just dies by saving you. So the game truly subverted my expectations. In general, it kinda did that by the students not being total idiots too, something you are used to when watching horror. People acting really dumb and then they die. Here that's not truly the case, since there's also just no way out really. There's a cosmic force that forces people to stay, so at least there's a reason for people not just walking away or breaking a window and then just jumping out of it. From the first floor obviously. They don't really go explore on their own either when stuff goes down. They mostly just cover in their little corner and get killed eventually since there's no way out. Even the ones who stayed in the group got killed by their very own friend because it wasn't truly her friend but a clay doll instead who just brutally beats her up. Why? Actually, we don't know. It makes sense for the mastermind to make a clay doll out of the principal to gain access to everything in the school to prepare the ritual with, but why a random girl that just killed her friend? Any other monster could have done that too. The real principal also just sits in a clock tower in a little prison. Not very comfy, I would assume, so maybe the other girl is actually also alive, somewhere. Hopefully at home, and she never needs to know that a copy of her killed her best friend. That won't bring back her friend, but you always gotta look at the bright side of life. It could always be worse. Then there's also the friend who spends most of his time on the toilet, and I can really relate to that as a lactose intolerant person that never learns the lesson after eating too much, and then when he leaves it, he gets all the water sucked out of his body by a monster coming out of a mirror which murders him. I took the risk and looked into the mirror too after being told I shouldn't, but you know, save states are powerful for moments such as these. A statement I shall betray right after. To get one of the better endings, there's something you have to do near the end. After leaving the shrine, you get to a crossing that has two paths. That one part in Hunter x Hunter in the tower taught me that if you don't know which way to take in a labyrinth, you always gotta go right. But to be honest, I'm not even sure if that's what they really said, or if they actually said left. I always mix it up, and well, white was not the right path here. Luckily, this little lizard is pretty friendly, because if I would be that lizard myself, I would have for sure attacked. Maybe they are really blind. That's what I thought when I played the game. When I was looking up a long play to check differences to my own playthrough, I saw the game has different endings. And one of them requires you to talk to this one lizard. The whole time, the game just teaches you to avoid them, but this, yep, don't avoid it. I mean, the game kinda teases you about that one of the other characters in the game had a brother that went missing and most likely had to live in the underground cave, but would you really think he turned into a lizard? In the end, that's all on me though. With the power of save states, I should have just taken my chances to run straight at him. Can I tell you about one of my biggest disappointments in the game though real quick? At the end you climb further and further up the clock tower and finally, it's time for the hammer to play a role. Pretty early on in the game you pick up a hammer and think, damn, I get to smash things, yippee. And eventually you just forget that you even have a hammer because you never had to use it. You see some gears and you gotta get over them, but the bridge is broken, despite a normal human easily being able to jump over it. So you gotta throw the hammer into the gears to stop them, that's all. And then you climb the gears instead of jumping. I get not wanting to jump while they move because they can easily squash you, but climbing that big gear seems harder than just jumping over the gears or onto them. And we could have just thrown the crowbar in it too. Why didn't you just let me smash things? The game has a whole empty room full of crates and you're not allowed to use the crowbar or hammer on any of them. I tried it out. On every single crate I used the crowbar and it told me nope, can't do that here. Why would you do that to the player? The whole existence of that room is an insult to people who love to smash crates, because you can't do it here. Not with the hammer, not with the crowbar. Why? I don't like this room. There's some other crazy moments in the game, but I will leave those for you to find out if you still decide to play the game. It certainly was an experience. I went into it thinking it's just gonna be a little spooky adventure at a Japanese school, and instead I actually could have met Cthulhu if I got the right bad ending for it. In a way, all the endings are kinda bad because in all of them you got PTSD of the things that have happened throughout the game and have the madness slowly consume you fully, which is a pretty normal thing when it comes to Lovecraftian and horror. Even if you survived the story, did you truly survive? It's also kinda sad to see what happened to the studio called Soft Machine who developed the game. They made a few games before Iro and a few after, and then had to close their doors. If you check the Moby Games page of the people who worked on the game and look at what they have worked on afterwards, you will notice that many of them just never worked on another game or just 2 or 3 games before their entry stopped. Maybe the game cursed them, or they have found things they enjoyed more than working in the game industry. I hope they're all well. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and have a good night, or a good day, or anything that fits your time zone, because everyone deserves to have a good anything. Unless you're evil, but I'm sure no evil people would watch YouTube videos, right? They would be doing evil things instead. Bye bye.